Hello, everybody. I wanted to just share my process of coming up with my little sci-fi space carrier scene, and I'll be showing it to you right now, just so you get a nice good look at it. I'm just gonna kind of break it down for you and how I got to that point. It took me about a whole month, but I wasn't consistent every single day in adding to it. But I did try to I did try to add to it throughout the month, and there was more I could have done, but there's always more you could have done. So one of my first goals when I was first starting out was I wanted to block out the scene. So what that means is I'll pull this up. Um, Basically, I set up a uh, I set up just what I want it to look like big picture. So I wanted the sun over here somewhere. I wanted the the Earth, and then I wanted the moon, um, and then I knew I wanted the ships kind of going towards the moon and the perspective from a colonist uh, in one of these little carrier areas. You might see a little bit. You might understand the scene a little bit better as I'm working through it with you. Sorry, weird noises in the background, and I'm not home alone. Lucas is here, but he's sleeping. So, yeah. Anyway, so back to the scene. Okay, sorry. One of my first goals was to accurately, well, try to accurately represent the distance between the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon. And so, it's pretty quick, pretty easy to look up that info. I just Googled distance to Moon. That was 238,900 miles. Distance to Sun was 92.96 million miles. And then so basically, you in Blender you can adjust the units. So I use Imperial because obviously it's the best. But you can adjust like what these little units mean. Like, so this is like a full mile, but then you can upgrade it to 10. You know, uh, I think it's something like that. Um, but if I were to do the miles in here from the moon and the Earth, basically I'd get one sphere here, and then another one super far away off in the distance, like barely visible. Um, so that was an issue. So I had to scale it down to like a tenth of the actual distance, just so I could fit it in the scene. And then another thing I looked up was uh, the radius of just the Earth and the Moon. So the Earth was about 4,000 miles in radius, and then 1,079. And interesting thing is when you bring in a sphere, you can actually, you can just type in how big the radius is, And so I want it to be 1,079.4 miles. Boom. So, sorry, it was so small on the scene that I had to reset the the file. Anyway, so yeah, I can make real, I can make it as accurate as I could. So when I plugged in all that information, yeah, it was like super small and then super far away. So it was kind of, not helpful. So then I just had to scale it. Not only did I have to scale it to a tenth of the size, the camera started going crazy when, when I started adjusting, like, an object here and then an object like super far away, and it was just Blender was just like literally this is a accurate representation of like how the object was being shown. It was like very shaky, like it was scared because it was too, I don't know, too far away or too close. I don't know. Anyway, so I blocked out the scene, and you could see this was the original scene I blocked out. And then, from there, I started to just pick apart pieces and decided to model them. So first thing obviously was the ship, because it was the It's the main theme of the challenge is a space carrier. So I'm just gonna show you just a couple of the space carriers when I was first starting out. So this was not the first one. This was the first one right here. I rendered an image every time I did one. So this is the first one, pretty simple. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a home run on the first pass on it. I just wanted to get like a general idea put together. I put this big old shield in the front of the carrier because I knew that when you're moving forward in space, I think there's like a bunch of micro bits that could just fly into your ship and then cause damage. So I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not an astrologist. Yeah. So that was the first try. Second try was with just playing with some of the compositing, and then third try I added some lighting. You can see with the little red glow here. So I wanted to show you this because this is where I worked mainly for the space scene, or for the ship, because this is not our main scene. I did something called linking. So I bring an object into the main scene, and then I can't do anything to that object in the main scene. I can only edit it in its own file right here. So as you can see, this is the ship file, and it's much easier this way because if you remember the distance problem, if you remember the distance problem, I couldn't really edit it that well, especially with the proportions being what they were. So as you can see, here's the ship. This is the final ship. I didn't really save different stages. I think I did, but I didn't want to open up a billion files. But as you can see, here's the ship. I added some little chords to add a little bit more something to it, a little something, a little razzle dazzle. but yeah, as you can see, so I can come here, I can edit these things, move this around. Really sluggish because I'm doing like 20 different things at once on my computer and it's not handling it so well. But I can't actually edit the engine because it's also its own file. So, and here it is here. So I'm just breaking it down like piece by piece. The more you break it down and make it simpler for yourself, the more complex you can make the scene. Later on. So I try to add these little piston-looking things. I don't know. Originally, it was like a big cylinder, and it looked kind of lame. So I wanted to, I looked up some reference images. As you can see here, there's a couple different that I looked up online. So I just looked at some reference pictures here, and I eventually came to something. I really liked this one here, this guy, and I really wanted to make it more like a Y shape. So I just tried to implement that, and eventually went from this little sphere, or this little like cylinder shape, to a little bit more interesting shape, kind of implementing these. So the ship was the first part, the ship was my biggest thing, but I didn't do it all at once. I just kind of, I did a little bit of the ship here. I did a little bit of the moons and the earth, the moon and the earth there, So, but yeah, and I thought the colors for the little engines, shooting out fire would be really awesome. This dark blue and light blue, adding a little variation to it. And then eventually we got to the colonist, and the colonist was, for a while, it was just a cylinder and nothing interesting about a cylinder. But let's see here. So there's multiple times where it's a cylinder. So we have we have this time where I started really fleshing out the ship, and started getting the moon texture down a little bit more. And then this other time, or I spent a lot of time on the planet and the moon, and I still didn't get it right, even in the end. But yeah, just plain old Cylinder here, nothing really interesting. But finally, I started working on a colonist, and here's the colonist. All these different colors. I didn't go through and mark all these different colors on the model. It just the way you see it, so it helps you identify different parts of the model. That's all. So if I wanted to just do this, it'd just be a flat. But I like the random, which it just shows all the different little pieces. Yeah, I wanted to have the colonists playing like a little game on their palm in the original Vision, and so I tried to stick with that. Came up with something called Tetro, kind of like Tetris, but like a 3D version where you'd have to like spin it around with your finger as the cubes drop. I don't know. I didn't want to think too much about it, but making a helmet, not my forte, but I didn't think it had to be super complex. Maybe just mainly a visor and just some accents around it. I want to make these little capsules to I don't know, add a little more interesting details. Originally, I didn't have any legs yet because I wanted the colonist to have no legs. I read somewhere that sometimes I watch random YouTube videos like, oh, what would it be like to settle on the moon or something like that. And sometimes some people were saying like, yeah, you should make like there'd be body modifications that you can use to help survive on the planet, and that's kind of actually a big basis for the short story I'm writing. But I don't actually know if having no legs would actually help you live on the moon. But I decided it would look cool anyway, so I went with that. And but there is a funny little image. I before I had the legs. Let's see. Oh, right here. Yeah, this is before I had the legs. So I mean, it was planned out where the leg would go, but I just didn't have the actual leg modeled yet because I was modeled separately. So right now the colonist is just looking confused, like, why don't I have any legs? Especially without the game in there yet. But so yeah, this is one of the final goes on the colonist. I textured it a little bit more. Texturing is not my forte either. I'd like to learn more about it eventually, but yeah, here's a couple other little images to see it a little bit better, because these glowy bits are always cool to have in your suit. Just once more playing the game. So finally we're gonna go to the master scene. So you're gonna get blown away by this, but the size of this is. So here's the little room basically where I shot within, and then here is the whole scene. So as you can see, it's quite large. I tried to match up. See, it's kind of like that we're on another ship and we're viewing these other ships from a distance, and I try to plot them out a little bit. In many of the prototypes, I have the ship, being that far away. Eventually, but on the very last render, I decided to move it up, because that's the whole point. The whole theme of the thing is a spaceship. So if you can't really see the details, and I try to put a lot of details in. So if we zoom all the way over here, we've got all these little chords. Yeah, I know chords is kind of messy, but I if it was a little closer, I probably wouldn't show it that much, or have it like this. But I thought it looked interesting from this distance. But I try to have these little squares here represent like another little room. That way, like when you look back at over here, way over here, that's where our person is. So yeah, I try to get the proportions correct. I wanted it to seem like, you know, they had to do work out here, and so there's little walkways for them to walk, you know, and little elevators that they would take to get to places, and yeah, back here as well. I don't know what these are. Maybe it's like I don't know, water, food, something else, manufacturing. And then this would be like something where they launch the stuff, because you know they're migrating to the moon, so they need something to survive. They can't just land there with nothing. So yeah, lighting the scene was kind of hard though, because originally when I did the first one, this is actually much different because everything was scaled down in size a little bit differently. But when I tried that, it didn't work out because the lighting would not scale down to that size. It just wouldn't go down that small and, you know, bounce off of everything like here. You know, it would only go like this big, and obviously that's not what I wanted. So I had to actually try to make it everything pretty big. So yeah, as you can see, the moon's actually not that big compared to the ships, and the Earth is definitely not that big compared to the moon. But I just tried to scale it rather than put it off farther in the distance. I just try to scale it to represent the distance away. And same for the sun. The largest of the three is actually the smallest of the three in this scene. And yeah, it looks a little weird because there's two layers on top. One's for like the clouds and stuff, and then for the sun, one's for like a glowy bit. Or yeah, I joined those together. But yeah, so that's my scene, and you know, I try to add little details here and there with the ship. I don't want to go into rendered mode, but I'll show you in the final picture. I have little black dots in these windows just to kind of represent other people, you know, are occupying those spaces. And yeah, then we have the migration queue of 3, you know, 1, 2, and then the ship is 3. So the person's just chilling there, waiting for the ship to go down. And as you can see, this little block for some reason made it up here, and when I rendered it, I was about an hour away from the deadline, so I couldn't re-render it. I guess I could have photoshopped it over, but I didn't want to mess with the quality. It's like every time you open a file and you know, edit it and re-export it, you know, it degrades the quality. So, but yeah, this is the picture. Obviously the Earth still turned out a little weird. I think I adjusted some settings at the last second, and that's what caused the weird look. But you know, we're in the sci-fi future, and there could be any reason why it looks like that. Maybe there's just tons of pollution, right? And that's why they're leaving in the first place. But it's not. My story does not call for that, actually. There's a different reason why they're leaving, and I'm not going to say, mainly because I haven't figured it out yet. So I hope you like this. I hope you like my little picture. Hope this was just a fun little video for you to hear about how I achieved all this stuff. Even though I didn't go into specific editing techniques I used, this is just a kind of a breakdown of the whole picture, whole scene. So hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.